doesn't need any introduction. And we have two very accomplished cardiologists and very good friend of mine, Dr. Amit Malviya, Dr. Munna Das. So straightway over to Dr. PC, Dr. Mandal to go ahead with the program and to moderate the session.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Dilip, first, because you have created this platform, and it's a very, I think that's a very good idea, and it's a very good learning platform. We can share our knowledge also. And we'll start our presentations today by Dr. Amit Malviya. And regarding Dr. Malviya, he's DM Cardiology from All India Institute of Medical Science, New Delhi. And he's also a fellow of esteemed societies like American College of Cardiology and also SCAI. He has more than 50 publications, and he's moreover is a very prestigious post section editor of Indian Heart Journal and associated editor of Indian Journal of Cardiology, IJC. And he's also a reviewer of Indian Heart Journal and Elsevier publication. And he's a senior consultant interventional cardiologist and attached to Nigrims Hospital, Shillong. So he's serving a very good area, not like our metropolitan city. He's actually basically in a very area where the need is more. Dilip, do you agree? Then practicing in a metropolitan city and practicing in such area is not same. So it is a hats off to Dr. Malviya again, and I will request Dr. Malviya to start his session now. Dr. Malviya, please.
Thank you very much, sir, Mandal sir, and Dr. Dilip sir, for giving me this opportunity. Today, I'll be presenting some real life cases of pacemaker malfunction. As we know, pacemaker malfunction is an important part of our practice, but more important is a follow-up of such patients. Because after implantation, the way we follow them up is very important, because more or less many of the times we will find that there are certain abnormalities going on with the patients, and patients might be asymptomatic. So follow-up of these patients is important. I will start my presentation now. Can you see? Is it visible?
Yeah,
Yes, sir. Yes, we can see, sir.
So, as I said, pacemaker, we'll be discussing pacemaker malfunction today. Heart is a musical organ. It beats musically and it beats continuously from our birth till we die. And the music of heart is sometimes disturbed. When it is disturbed, we cardiologists come into play. We put pacemakers to correct this disturbed rhythm of heart. So what objectives of today's presentation are, basically we would like the audience to understand what are the 4 basic steps which are involved to solve the troubleshooting problems related to pacemakers, identify ECG abnormalities that result from pacing system malfunction and pseudo malfunction. Subsequently, I'll be telling what is the difference between a pacing system malfunction and a pseudo malfunction. Discern pacemaker functions that can affect patient hemodynamics, and describe the causes of pacemaker system anomalies and propose a potential solution. So this is the objective of today's talk. And the brief structure of presentation, I'll be presenting briefly, very briefly, the theoretical part of it, and then case-based discussion, 8 short cases, problem-based, only 2 slides per cases. So as I said, that steps in troubleshooting of pacemaker are very simple and remain same for each type of problem. First, you should be able to define the problem. What is the problem? And then identify the cause for the problem. What is causing the problem? For example, whether it is undersensing, oversensing. If it is undersensing, what is the problem? Whether the problem is with the generator, or it is with the lead, or with the heart of the patient, or any other problem. You correct the problem and verify the solution by obtaining the subsequent ECGs. So there are 4 or 5 potential problems which can happen during pacemaker interrogation in patients who have been implanted, either single chamber or dual chamber pacemakers. It is either undersensing, oversensing, non-capture, no output, or pseudo malfunction of the pacemaker. Now these upper four, under sensing to no output, these are real malfunction of the pacemaker related to the mechanical failures of the pacemaker components. Whereas pseudo malfunction is mostly related to the abnormalities in the intervals and the parameters set during pacemaker interrogation, which may lead to erroneous pacing by the pacemakers, resulting in pacemaker mediated tachycardia, etc. So under sensing, to be very simple, it is the failure of pacemaker to identify an intrinsic depolarization. The depolarization is there in the heart, but pacemaker does not identify it. As you can see in this ECG, there are P waves, but the pacemaker does not recognize the P wave and it continuously gives a pacing spike. So under sensing usually leads to over pacing. So this is very easy to understand. When the pacemaker under senses, it tries to overpace. Under sensing is usually caused by inappropriately programmed sensitivity. If you have programmed the sensitivity to inappropriately, or there's a lead dislodgement, failure of the lead in form of insulation break or conductor fracture. Lead maturation means it cannot, a lot of fibrosis around the lead tip, or change in the native signals. Native signals means the electrical signals originating from the heart. Now change in the native signals may be physiologic because of some electrolyte disturbances or because of some pathologies like myocardial infarction, etc. The second problem is oversensing. Oversensing is the sensing of inappropriate sensing of cardiac signals by the pacemaker. Means even when there is no activity present, the pacemaker senses it as a cardiac activity. Oversensing normally leads to underpacing because as you can see in this graph, there is a marker channel shows a sensed ventricular activity, but there is no ventricular activity actually in the ECG, which leads to inhibition of pacing, which is the program mode of action of the pacemaker. So oversensing usually leads to underpacing. Now this oversensing can be physiologic or non-physiologic. Physiologic and non-physiologic, as I said before, physiologic means conditions related to the pathology of heart. Non-physiologic means external interferences. Other important causes of undersensing are lead failure, poor connection at connector block, and exposure to interference. Now this interference can be external or internal. Means external interference like external electromagnetic radio waves, or internal interference like enhanced myopotentials. The third important problem is non-capture. Non-capture is when the pacemaker gives a spike, but it is not able to depolarize the myocardium. As you can see here, a pacing spike is seen in the atrial channel, but it is not able to produce a P wave. So this is called as non-capture. Non-capture is commonly caused by dislodgement of the lead or a very low output, lead fibrosis around the lead, poor connection at connector block, or lead failure because of insulation break or lead fracture. Less common causes of non-capture are usually Twiddler syndrome when the pacemaker migrates and the connection between myocardium and the lead tip is very less. Electrolyte abnormalities like hyperkalemia, myocardial infarction, a depleted battery of pacemaker, or exit blocks. No output is the condition where there is no ECG artifact. On ECG, you cannot see any pacemaker artifact, and the set rate is not followed by the pacemaker because the pacemaker is not giving enough voltage to depolarize the myocardium. So as you can see, difference from no capture, there is no pacemaker artifact on the surface ECG, whereas marker channel might still show a pacing artifact. So no output is usually caused by poor connections, lead failure, battery depletion, or circuit failure. Now I come to the pseudo malfunctions. Pseudo malfunctions are basically unusual, unexpected, and eccentric findings that appear to result from pacemaker malfunction, but actually they represent normal pacemaker function. But because of certain programming, inherent programming problems, the pacemaker starts pacing the heart in a manner which appears abnormal. And a classical example of pseudo malfunction is pacemaker mediated tachycardias. So pseudonormal, as I said, they can be classified in three categories: related problem, interval related problems, or mode switch related problems. So now, as I said, the basic theoretical discussion is over, and more or less there are 3-4 important things which we should remember while following up a patient of pacemaker. I mean, this I'm talking in terms of related to troubleshooting. Otherwise, there are a lot of other things to be done when you follow up a pacemaker patient. But in regards to troubleshooting, first is you have to see whether there is undersensing or not, there is oversensing or not, whether there is any failure to output, any failure to capture, or any evidence of pseudo malfunctions. So now I present to you the first case. This is a 77-year-old woman. I implanted a pacemaker dual chamber for 6 sinus syndrome almost 1 year back, and she presented to emergency department with palpitations. This is the ECG. Now I would like to the participants to comment upon. I will just briefly tell the findings. As you can see in this ECG, there are pacing spikes, single pacing spikes at regular interval. Some of them are captured, some of them are non-captured. So what do you think is the best explanation for these findings? How will I put the chat box?
Any response from the audience?
From the audience?
I think answer is already marked. Your screen is showing AOO spacing. I think that is the answer.
So
And
I think I'm having difficulty in going to chat box to see the answers from the participants. Participants can
go to slide presentation mode again. Go to slide mode again.
yes,
This is not slide presentation mode.
chat folder. So anyways, the answer is AOO pacing. As you can see, the interval between the paced events and is constant. The constant interval between the paced events is indicative that the pacemaker in giving impulses at regular interval, and some of these beats are captured, some are not captured. If you see properly, the first, third, fifth, and seventh beat are captured, and there is AV conduction, whereas others are not. This is happening because the pacemaker is having accelerated junctional tachycardia as well. So what is happening is some of the beats are captured and some are not captured due to retrograde propagation of junctional beat, or maybe a close coupling with preceding junctional beat. And this situation is commonly happening when the pacemaker is programmed to AOO mode. So solution for this problem is to reprogram the pacemaker to DDI. The second case is a 57-year-old man, a dual chamber pacemaker implanted 3 years ago. Patient came for routine follow-up. He was not giving any complaints. This is the ECG. I would like the audience to see the ECG for a while. Then I will switch on to my question.
Dr. Malviya, I can read out the chat boxes if you want. I
Yes,
can do that.
So if any, when I ask for answers, please please let me know what are people answering, right?
Sure, sir. Sure.
Give some lead. Look at the second beat of the ECG. Second beat.
I will give some leads. Look at the second beat. You can see a pacing spike just after the ending of QRS and falling just at the onset of T wave. Whereas in third, fourth beat, you can see that the pacing artifact is followed by myocardial depolarization. Whereas in the fifth beat, there is no pacing artifact and there is a spontaneous QRS. So can you guess what is happening? So which of the following best explains the findings? I got one answer. I think it's correct.
Undersensing. Someone has.
Someone has already correctly pointed out ventilator undersensing. So this ECG is typical of ventricular undersensing. As you can see, pacing spike is seen immediately after second QRS, and
Why
complex following the spike, because it is falling in the absolute refractory period, which is called as functional non-capture. Interestingly, you can see this undersensing is intermittent because there are some pacing spike which are followed by the polarized ventricular myocardium. Atrial oversensing will lead to increased ventricular pacing, which is not occurring here. So clearly we can rule out atrial oversensing, and ventricular oversensing will always lead to decreased pacing. As I said in my introductory part, oversensing always leads to decreased pacing. Undersensing leads to increased pacing. So those two options are out. So this is a classical example of ventricular undersensing. Now it's the same patient. I would like the audience to see this ECG again. And did you pick anything else up?
look at V1, V2? Please look at V1 and V2.
There is tall R in V1. Why there is tall R in V1?
That means RBBB. Why RBBB?
So RBBB pattern. So what do you think is the site of pacing in this?
Go back ECG again.
The pace, you see the pace complexes in V1. So what do you think is the site for pacing? Any answers?
Right or left? Let them guess. Right or left?
Any answers?
Yes.
LV pacing. So I got one answer. I think it's correct.
I think.
So the answer is LV apex. As you can see in the X-ray, during implantation, the ventricular lead, RV lead has been inappropriately placed in the coronary sinus, which is leading to LV pacing. So as you can see, the explanation is very clear. Apart from undersensing, you can see wherever the leads, the pacing artifacts are captured, you can see there is a RBB morphology. Now RBB morphology pacing is associated with LV pacing, as well as if you see 2,3 AVF, the axis is superior. That also favors the LV pacing. So whenever you see a pacemaker follow-up patient, always you should try to look at the morphology of pace beats. Right ventricular pacing is associated with LBBB morphology. So if there is any abnormal morphology of QRS in V1, you must get an X-ray done to verify the position of lead. Now I'll come to case 4. A 76-year-old patient implanted with dual chamber pacemaker for CHP. He presented for pacemaker evaluation in routine pacemaker clinic. This is the IgM finding. Can anybody guess what it is showing?
What is the fate of every third atrial beat? What is the fate of every third atrial beat? Try to guess now. Every third atrial beat.
The marker channel, see the atrial channel, see the ventricular channel, and try to see what is happening to every third consecutive atrial beat. Yes, I got one answer from Dr. Anune. I think he's correct. Every third atrial beat is falling in the post-ventricular atrial refractory period. Now, why this is happening? So what do we do? Which of the following programming changes is most likely to prevent the finding? So what do we do for this patient? We should increase the maximum tracking rate, shorten the PVRP, shorten AV delay, lower the mode switch rate, or program the atrial channel to more sensitive setting. What should be the most appropriate if IgM is showing like this, where every third beat is falling in the ventricular refractory period? I think I got one correct answer. Somebody is saying increase
Atrial
PARP, but two answers I got correct from Mr. Bhaskar and Mr. Sanjeev. We should increase the maximum tracking rate. This is a very common problem with dual chamber pacemakers for CHP, the upper tracking rate. See, in previous pacemakers, whenever the heart rate used to increase above a certain limit, they used to go in 2:1 block. So there was a precipitous fall of heart rate, which used to become symptomatic. Sometimes patient used to complain of lightheadedness. Now this algorithm, new algorithm, which manifests as a Vanky-Back phenomenon on ECG, and which is typically causes pseudo pacemaker Vanky-Back. What happens is whenever the heart rate starts to going towards the MTR, that is the maximum tracking rate, the pacemaker automatically prolongs the AV delay so as to stop so as to stop the phenomena of 2:1 AV block. So what happens is every subsequent third or fourth beat would fall in the atrial refractory period, post-ventricular atrial refractory period, and the ECG will show a Vanky-Back phenomena. So there is nothing to worry about it. The best solution for this is you can increase the maximum tracking rate in pacemaker settings, and this problem will go away. Now I come to case 5, a 56-year-old patient, dual chamber pacemaker implanted 4 years ago for sick sinus syndrome. And this is the ECG. Have a look at the ECG. This is a very simple one. Have a look at the ECG, and I would like you to see towards the morphology of QRS in V1. What is the duration of QRS, whether it is narrow or wide, and what is the axis. So the question is, what is the most likely position of ventricular electrode? Any answers?
Can you just go back to the ECG, please?
So we are not getting answers. I got one answer from Manish and one more answers. I think
Options.
many people have got it correct. The answer is RV outflow tract. So very easy to make out. You see the pace complexes show a LBB morphology and inferior vector. 2, 3 AVF, if you try to see 2, 3 AVF, 2, 3 and AVF, there is a positive deflection, which means inferior vector. Inferior vector with LBB morphology is RVOT position of the lead. So without an X-ray, you can determine the lead position. So now I come to the case number 6, a 71-year-old woman implanted a dual chamber pacemaker for high-grade AV block. She came with recurrent palpitations, angiography was done, there was nothing significant. Echo also, there was mild diastolic dysfunction. She had a history of hypertension. So this is the above picture of Holter, and below is the picture of IgM. So have a close look at it, and then I'll post my question. So what is the most likely underlying rhythm? Any answers?
Some well-formed P was also there. That will give the clue whether what kind of tachycardia going on.
Just try to see the ECG when the patient is not into tachycardia and how it degenerates into the tachycardia, and try to focus on the atrial and ventricular channels. So basically we are getting answers as PMT, which is not correct, I guess. The answer is atrial tachycardia. As you can see, there are few clearly defined P waves, which makes the choice of AF unlikely. If you concentrate on the EGM, you can see that intrinsic conduction is followed by pacing at maximum tracking rate, followed by a slow pacing. This is when the mode switch happens. So what is happening is, once the atrial rate is increasing, the pacemaker is doing A sense V pace, A sense V pace up to maximum tracking rate, followed by a 2:1 response. So the heart rate goes down. So this problem cannot be solved completely by programming the pacemaker. But what can be done is, if you lower the MTR and mode switch rate, the symptoms of palpitation may go down. But you have to primarily treat the atrial tachycardia. But for an interim relief, the pacemaker parameters can be set to have a certain relief from palpitations related to atrial tachycardia. Now, case number 7, 75-year-old man with normal LV function, pacemaker implanted six months ago because of syncope and carotid sinus hypersensitivity. He came with 1 month dyspnea, and echocardiography shows mild LV dysfunction. This is his routine histogram, ventricular pacing histogram. So have a close look at it. Then I would give you my question. The atrial histogram and ventricular histogram. I will give you a hint. Most of the events are paced. A sense V pace is happening. 100%. 100% ventricular pacing is happening. So my question is, based on these findings, I have already told you that 100% ventricular pacing is happening. A sense V pace, A sense V pace, all the time. He is on a pacemaker from last 6 months for episode of syncope, found to have carotid sinus hypersensitivity. Initial LV function was normal. Now it started deteriorating. So what should we do based on these findings? Increase the AV delay, decrease the AV delay, increase the lower rate limit, increase the tracking rate, or program the rate sensor on. I got one answer. I think 2 answers we got. 3 answers. All 4 answers and all 4 correct. I think increase the AV delay. And the answer is very simple. Patient doesn't have a AV block. So there is no reason to pace RV unnecessarily. RV pacing leads to LV dysfunction, that is well known. So we prolong the AV interval, the intrinsic beat will conduct and patient will not have unnecessary pacing. So this is the best way to tackle this problem and give him medications as required for the heart failure symptoms. Now case number 9, a 57-year-old man, pacemaker implanted 2 years ago, presented to OPD due to periods of lightheadedness pre-syncope. So this is his IgM finding, and this, as you can see, the atrial marker channel and ventricular marker channel. This is the arrow indicates arm stress. Whenever he lifts up his arm, this type of EGM is observed. Kindly have a close look at it, and then we will discuss. Any answers? So the question is, the abnormal sensing shown in the recording demonstrate which of the following? Have a close look. Atrial marker is showing lot of sensing markers. So what is the reason for this abnormal sensing? Is it electrical appliance interference, electrical shock, lead fracture, loose screw, or myopotential inhibition?
Myopotential.
I think we got 2 correct answers, 3. Supradeep, Sanjeev, and Kulmax. It is basically a myopotential inhibitor. What is happening is, there is ventricular oversensing due to arm movement, which is seen as a noise in the baseline. often results of sensing myopotentials. So insulation failure can also be one of the cause, but a big hint was that these things happen only when the patient is stressing his arms. So that was the hint for the answer. Otherwise, an insulation failure can also present like this, similar IgEM. And a loose screw is unlikely because a 2-year-old pacemaker, it would have presented earlier. And electromagnetic interference has more distinct pattern, unlike this, the way you see this is baseline looks like a noise. So this patient had myopotential inhibitions, which is very uncommon to see, but I thought it would be important. It's an interesting ECG to show. So I finished with my 9 cases, and then I welcome all for discussion now.
Because if you allow, I can make some 3-4 comments. Can you hear me, Amit? Can you hear me?
Sir, I can hear you. Yes, sir.
Hello? Yeah.
Yes, I can hear you.
I have got 2-3 comments, Amit.
Yes, sir.
One is this patient, you just showed that he's moving his hands and he's having this kind of, over sensing. This can happen both in lead fracture as well as myopotential inhibition. But the what kind of potentials you are seeing there. If it is high frequency, it is myopotential, and if it's low frequency signals are there, it is sensed, it is lead fracture. So lead fracture, you will characteristically get low frequency make and break kind of sensing pattern.
This is what I was telling, sir.
And one more comment to you, Amit. You showed a case of Vankeback, pacemaker Vankeback, where every third beat of atrial beat was not sensed because it was falling in PVAR. So the idea is you have to increase the maximum tracking rate, but it will happen only when you are going to reduce TARP, total atrial refractive period. So TARP constitutes of AV delay plus PVAR. So AV delay is fixed because it will be conducting. So PVARP is going to less. You have to reduce the PVARP. So it is automatic PVARP, or you are going to.
That is
both
to reduce the PVARP.
Increasing NTR. These two terms.
I think, Dilip, now the pacemakers have a dynamic PVARP. So this PVARP itself, they decrease. So the concept now to take care of pseudo-Vankeback is the dynamic PVARP. The dynamic PVARP itself takes care of it now.
But Dr. Sanjeev, it will happen when the atrial rate is high. In that case, atrial rate was low.
No. Whether the reason for that is that if your P wave is falling in the PVAR period, that is why it is not able to see it. So if whether atrial rate high or low, it is the point is to increase your window of seeing the P wave. And it's exactly opposite of the PMT. PMT, we don't want to see the P wave. And we want to see every P wave after the maximal tracking rate is achieved. So here it is, the best thing is to go for a dynamic PVARP, where the PVARP automatically decreases on its own with this higher rate. Before it reaches a rate of 170 and it goes to a mode switch. This is in the intermediate period. This is the difference. You'll have to keep the difference between the maximal tracking rate so that the dynamic PVARP is active.
So it was excellent presentation, Amit. It was a wonderful case. Both selection of cases were really wonderful. So Prakash, your comment, and then we'll move on to Dr. Munna Das.
Presentation was very good, and elaboration and ECG and everything was very good. So hats off to Dr. Amit Balvia. I think his presentation is well understood by every audience, and they have learned well. I think from my point, I can tell that I have learned also. So we are going to, thanks to Dr. Amit, please stay with us, and we are going to our second presentation by Dr. Munna Das. He is well known to me. He is DM Cardiology from IPGMR in 2007 and certified cardiac device specialist like our Dr. Dilip Kumar, and they are also very much interested in devices. He has got EP training in Bangalore and China and device training in Germany. So he is now interventional cardiologist and electrophysiologist in Narayana Super Specialty Hospital, Howrah, and BM Birla Heart Research Center, Kolkata. So Dr. Munna, please go ahead with your presentation.
Hello, am I audible to all of you?
Yes, you are well audible and you are also well visible also. Please go ahead.
Okay. So thank you for giving me this opportunity to Dr. Dilip Kumar and his team. And my presentation actually overlaps to some extent with Dr. Malavia, but bear with me. My first slide, please. Slide presentation, maybe the first slide.
Just let me know if you can see the screen.
Yeah, I can see the screen. You can go on to the presentation mode. Yeah, thank you. The first slide, yeah. So the first slide, which shows that we need whatever problem related to the device comes to us, our main objective is to treat the patient and not the device. Next slide. And we all, people in the industry and the device specialists, we usually try to follow a methodical approach. Mnemonic to remember is PBL stop, that is presenting rhythm and rate to be analyzed first, to assess the battery status, the lead status for evidence of lead failure, sensing threshold of the output itself, observation of any errors that we need to collect the data and the events, and program and print for future correspondence. Next slide. Next slide, yeah. So the troubleshooting tools include the patient first, patient start, the calipers, magnet, a 12-lead ECG, technical services, help from our industry people, as also pacing encyclopedia, the product performance report, and we need to know when the implant occurred, what was the device model, the telemetry data, the device diagnostics, and the whole entire lot of information before coming to the particular conclusion. Next slide. So for effective troubleshooting, we should know the pacing code, know the phases of DDD pacing, sensing, that what is the atrial sensing, the ventricular sensing, the atrial capture, ventricular capture, understand the timing cycles, and perform all troubleshooting and all pacemaker checks the same way. This is very important. And remember to treat the patient, not the device. Next slide. And the 4 solutions to any pacemaker problem is to reprogram the device, to replace the system or a component, to reposition the leads or the device, and last of all, to retreat. That is to do nothing, because nothing went wrong, particularly in setting of certain pseudo malfunctions. The algorithms we didn't know. Next slide. So this is a slide that is common to Dr. Malavia, and we should be aware of oversensing, undersensing, non-capture, no output, rate variability, and pseudo malfunction. Next slide. So I have divided my talk into certain ECGs and certain EGMs. We will start with ECGs first and then move on to EGMs. Next slide. Next slide, please. Yeah. So this is a patient who has been implanted a dual chamber pacemaker, and on the first post-op day, in fact, the first follow-up day, we find this particular ECG. So whether we need to, looking at the ECG, what is your inference regarding whether we need to have a chest X-ray to check the lead positions, adjust the ventricular sensitivity, schedule for a reoperation, adjust the AV delay, or do nothing? And the highlighted portion in the middle of the thing is the rhythm strip that has been put, the lead 2 and V5, and the markers are already there, and you can very well judge. It is an uncommon problem, but one should always remember, particularly the operator, and even ask the industry people regarding clues to this, to avoid this particular problem.
We'll now wait for response from the audience. And I will request the audience to look at lead V1 that is marked ASENS VPS. Is it in right position or somewhere else? Look at lead V1 and judge what has happened. Please respond.
Okay, so one answer was to do nothing. But I think that would be a catastrophe, because as we can see that the atrial lead is sensing the ventricular.
Correct response also. There is response 3, schedule for a reoperation. I think that is.
Absolutely. So actually the atrial port received the ventricular lead and the ventricular port received the atrial lead. This can be a common error that can be fatal for patients who are dependent on pacemakers. Fortunately, this patient was not a patient who was dependent on the pacemaker, but this could be fatal. Next slide. So this is a Holter tracing from a post-PPI patient. Here the device is a dual chamber pacemaker and is programmed to a lower rate of 60 per minute and an upper rate of 140 per minute. And from the ECG, looking in the middle of the Holter strip, can you have an idea of whether it is ventricular oversensing, any special function, a dynamic AV delay, or safety pacing due to crosstalk?
Yes, there is a correct response also, response 4.
No, like what I want to emphasize, yes, safety pacing due to a crosstalk is a phenomena that could have been the answer. But look at the next beat, where the ventricular paced impulse comes very short, with a very short AV delay. So why this happened? Yeah, so that is the correct answer. It was a special function. It's called MVP, or managed ventricular pacing. It is an algorithm that is put in many of these pacemakers, particularly the Medtronic pacemaker, where it allows intrinsic RV conduction to occur, and it is an AIR mode that initially operates. And once there are two consecutive non-conducted A waves or P waves or whatsoever, then the device goes into the DDDR mode. Next slide, please. Yeah, so you can elaborately see we have the long AR interval, and then we have the AV block. This is a thing that is done in patients who have intermittent AV block, but in complete AV block, this should not be an algorithm that should not be programmed. So in long QT patients, it should not be programmed because it can be pro-arrhythmic because of the short-long sequence. And in complete AV block, it is useless to program this particular algorithm. Two places where we should know not to program or put on this particular algorithm. And this particular pacing impulse to depolarize the ventricle following the next atrial output was actually a safety measure in this particular MVP algorithm to prevent ventricular asystole. Next slide. Case 3. So this is a rhythm strip which demonstrates intermittent, either a loss of capture, atrial capture, or DDDI mode, loss of atrial sensing, normal VDD behavior, or atrial oversensing. Now, as per the pacing code guidelines, we know that the first letter is the chamber paced, the second letter is the chamber sensed, and the third letter is the mode of operation, whether it's inhibition or your stimulation or both. And you can notice in the maybe the second last impulse as also the second last impulse on the trace itself, as also on the middle of the trace, you can see an artifact falling on the P wave. So it is actually intermittent loss of atrial capture. Next slide, please. Case 4. So this is another interesting ECG come EGM, where you can see a 30-year-old lady with a history of recurrent syncope put on permanent pacemaker on interrogation following a disease spell. Possible diagnosis? You see the intrinsic patient's intrinsic rhythm, which then actually phases out. Patient goes into relative asystole, and then you see the pacemaker starting to work with the atrial output and the ventricular output, and then it speeds up. Any clue? So it is actually the red drop response that we put in patients with neurocardiogenic syncope. Young patients are prone to this particular cardiomyometry form of neurocardiogenic syncope, where we advocate pacemakers, although it's a second option. And first option is to prevent the triggers and till training and etc. And even in these patients, we should be aware of the red drop response algorithm, where a certain fall in the interval delay will trigger this particular pacemaker response of increasing the heart rate, so that these patients are prevented from having syncope. Next slide. Next slide, please. To the EGMs. Next slide. Yeah. So it is a 68-year-old active male with a Brady-Tachy syndrome, syncope about 10 years ago with documented bradycardia, a dual chamber pacemaker in place for 9 years, and sent to your office for a device follow-up clinic because pacemaker has now detected a new arrhythmia. So this is, next slide please. So this is one particular EGM that has been discussed in the previous talk itself by Dr. Malavia. So possibilities include either AFib, crosstalk, atrial lid fracture, or EMI, electromagnetic interference. Any suggestions from the audience? So it's EMI. EMI could be the answer, but I think it's not, because as you can see, if it was EMI, it would have involved both the ventricular and the atrial channels. So it's an external source. So the atrial lid fracture, where high frequency artifacts can be detected on the atrial channel as also on the marker channel, which senses as atrial sense events, is the main issue here. And this is basically a slide to demonstrate a difference between EMI vis-a-vis your atrial lid failure. Next slide. So next slide, please. So EMI would have affected both the atrial and the ventricular channels as shown in this particular slide. Next slide. So case 2, it's a 70-year-old woman in the device follow-up clinic noted to have a detection of new onset atrial tachyarrhythmia. Now you can see the EGM, the atrial channel on the top, and then you have the ventricular channel, and then you have the marker channels and the timing itself. And the atrial tachy or the fib is detected by the pacemaker due to retrograde atrial capture increasing the atrial rate, intermittent atrial far field oversensing, irregular atrial tachycardia, and ventricular far field oversensing. So people have told it as ventricular far field oversensing. Now the correct answer would be ventricular far field oversensing, because we know that if we draw a vertical line on the ventricular EGM, we can find that it is, as per the temporally, it is correlated with the second atrial EGM on the atrial channel, and therefore it is the far field ventricular signal that has been wrongly sensed by the atrial channel, and then it is counting them in the tachy or the fib range and diagnosing it as atrial tachyarrhythmia. Now what to do? What is the solution? The solution would be obviously to decrease the atrial lead sensitivity so that it should not sense this particular far field signal. Actually, during implant itself, while positioning the atrial lead, we ask our industry people or our technicians to look at the screen and tell us whether we are seeing the atrial and this ventricular far field signal on the atrial lead at all or not. If it is, if the ratio is less than next slide. It's next slide, please. Next slide. So case 3 is a 68-year-old male with ischemic cardiomyopathy, intermittent AV block, and DDDR pacing with a lower rate of 60 per minute, upper rate of 140 per minute, and a past medical history of PSVT that was not studied. And on interrogation, we found the patient who had 2 mode switch episodes. % of the time. Next slide, please. So here in the EGM itself, can we just decipher by looking in the here itself in the marker channel on the upper strip, where we get in the close to the end, where we get 2 VS, and then we get this VPAS, and the entire saga of VPAS continues to be only terminated by another atrial pace beat at the end of the strip. Absolutely correct. So it is basically PMT. So PMT is a pacemaker mediated tachycardia, is actually a re-entry tachycardia, and it's a re-entry tachycardia using the pacemaker lead into the ventricle as the your forward pathway, and the retrograde pathway is through the AV node or another accessory pathway to complete the circuit, including the atrium itself. It occurs when there is uncoupling or decoupling of the atrial and the ventricular events, either by commonly a PVC or a PAC or whatsoever, and there the subsequent retrogradely conducted intact retrograde AVA conduction is necessary. The subsequently conducted retrograde A wave is sensed by the atrial lead outside the PVAR, and then it gives a ventricular output that follows the same cycle to perpetuate the PMT. And this is the next slide, please. Next slide. So this is the typical Lewis diagram of how PMT perpetuates. So it is either initiated by a loss of AV synchrony due to PVC, loss of atrial capture, atrial undersensing, very important, an important substrate of producing PMT, oversensed P wave, a long VA, or premature atrial contraction. Anything which allows a retrograde VA conduction will perpetuate or initiate and perpetuate PMT. Next slide. Next slide, please. So case 4. It is a 75-year-old patient with 6 sinus disease and intermittent AV block, both things together, and is seen in device clinic with complaints of intermittent rapid heartbeat. Here you can see this patient was having A-pace, V-sense, A-pace, V-sense, A-pace, V-sense, and then suddenly it's A-pace, V-pace, A-pace, V-pace. And mind you, if you find on the EGM itself, the A-pace marker channel on the EGM itself does not produce any EGM at all. So what is the rhythm? Is it a PMT, VT, or there is a term called repetitive non-reentrant VA synchrony and atrial oversensing? Any suggestions? It is called repetitive non-reentrant VA synchrony. You can go back to the next slide, to the previous slide. To the previous slide, please. Yeah. So here you can see. Yeah. Here you can see actually the A pace fails to capture the atrium because the V pace has already produced a sense within the PVAR, which is not counted by the atrial channel. So it produces an A pace which falsely which is falsely delivered, fails to capture the atrium, and subsequently the V pace again comes, and this perpetuates. So here it is non-reentrant. It is not like PMT, where the impulse is delivered by the pacemaker to the ventricle in response to the atrial sense event occurring outside the P valve. Here, and that completes the circuit through the retrograde VA conduction. Here it is basically repetitive non-reentrant VA synchrony. The pattern we should remember. Next slide. So next slide, please. Next slide. Yeah. So a potential complication of RNR VAS is basically A pace in the atrial refractory period, which can produce atrial fibrillation. You can see in the topmost strip. Next slide. And this is a 75-year-old male with palpitation, and you can see the EGM itself, the A bipolar, the leadless ECG, and V bipolar, and this patient's options are new onset atrial tachycardia with ventricular tachycardia due to known ischemic cardiomyopathy, a classic onset PMT, or an atypical onset PMT. Now, mind you, this device interrogation also helps us to diagnose certain tachycardias. And any clues? Any takers? So you see here that in the first beat, yeah, it is an atrial tachycardia, because in the first beat itself, you can see there is a which has not conducted into the V. There is no V at all. And that means that this patient is having AV block is as a substrate, but that was put in the history itself. And then you can see that it starts off with an atrial ascents and then V pace, and ascents and V pace. And so it's like a tracking of the atrial tachycardia. Next slide. Yeah. So the variable VA interval suggests atrial tachy itself, and in this case, the tachy terminates with an A in refractory without a VP, and it was due to the complete AV block itself. Next slide. And this is a one-liner, a palpitation in a 60-year-old male with a dual chamber ICD, and whether it's a VT or an SVT. Any clues? So, right. So all of us here, most of us will be in favor of VT, because in the bottom strip, the first impulse, the first EGM to start off with is V sense. So nothing before that. So V sense, and then the entire saga starts. So it's the if it is a PVC, to start off with an atrial, start off with a tachycardia without a preceding premature atrial P, or even if there is a timed atrial P, but with a very short non-physiologic AV delay, it is ventricular tachycardia that we usually diagnose on the ECG. The same thing is on the EGM. So the final nugget, next slide, will be most pacemaker malfunctions can be explained by dislodged leads or failing leads, battery, end of life, inappropriate programming due to changing patient conditions, or just an error, and normal operations we do not fully understand. Sudden changes in timing are almost always normal pacemaker, if in particular advanced operations. Thank you very much.
Excellent presentation, Munna. Okay,
Hello, can you
Munna, can you hear me?
Yeah, can you speak a bit louder?
Yeah.
Hello.
Excellent.
I can hear you now. Thank you.
Excellent
Thank you.
cases.
Yeah.
Can you go back to where you showed the lead fracture? So we can project a slide.
Yeah. The atrial lead fracture.
Yes, that is
Yeah.
EMI.
Back. Yeah. So yeah, that's what I was referring earlier. It is, you see, relatively low frequency and high magnitude, high amplitude, sensing.
High frequency, low amplitude. Yeah.
So this is the differentiating feature between the basically fracture and the EMIs and other.
Absolutely. And the EMI usually involves your both leads to some extent. but a particular atrial channel or a single channel involvement of these high frequency signals, non-physiologic intervals, usually signifies lead fracture like issue.
If there is a map potential, then again it will be a particular a lead can be involved, sparing the other lead. Okay.
That is true. That is true. That is true. Yeah.
Even after
But the stressor is important. I mean, in what situation it is occurring?
Yeah, and so we go back to a slide where atrial capture loss. Munna said. Previous back.
ECG. Yeah.
Further back. Yeah, here.
next one, next.
Yeah.
Next. Oh, go forward. Forward.
Yeah, forward or backward, sir?
Go back, go forward.
Atrial capture, where I
So
saw.
it is the case 4. Case 4.
Okay, case 4. Okay, I'll go.
Yes.
This is the one.
Just earlier, before that. Go
No,
back,
I think you have gone forward.
So this is case 4, sir.
Case 3. I have told case 3.
Okay, sir.
Case 3, right.
Right.
Yeah.
Munna, you said capture.
I think, Dilip, we are talking of this?
Yeah. So you go to the second last beat and you see there is an atria which was not sensed.
Absolutely.
And then there can be NCAP because atrial, no, it's not NCAP. There is an atrial beat, atrial spike is there. Maybe the atria was in refractive period, was not captured. So it kind of undersensing, it's going undersensing.
Absolutely. So both features are there. Means there is a loss of atrial sensing because the atrial spikes are coming in places where it should not have come. So too many spikes means undersensing.
I think both loss of capture and loss of sensing is there.
So loss of capture will be a functional loss of capture because the atrial refractoriness is already there. So no point in emphasizing loss of atrial capture. It is loss of atrial sensing. Absolutely correct.
But you maybe by mistake mentioned, loss of
that was a mistake, but it's a loss of atrial sensing. 100%.
Wonderful cases. Prakash da, your turn.
I think this is a nice presentation. Any comments from any other participants or any questions is there? They can unmute and question. Any question from anyone?
I will make one more comment, Prakash da.
Yes.
If Souvik, you can go to a slide, Munna slide, where there is a lead switching was there. Atrial port was connected to ventricle.
Yeah. The first case.
First case.
Yes, this one.
This is so when there is a a lead disconnection, there's a lead switching. If the patient is in sinus arrest, the patient will not have any problem. Sinus arrhythmia, no problem because
because the atrial lead will be capturing the ventricle anyway.
But this combination, if you are getting sometimes atrial pacing, sometimes ventricular pacing, but if there is a ventricular pacing followed by another spike, which is diagnostic of lead switch, you can't see any condition it is going to happen. So there is a and V, but this A is with ventricle, so ventricle is getting paced, and then the ventricular spike is coming, which is coming just after this one. So a ventricle pace followed by just after that atrial pace, 2 spikes. It is sine qua non for a lead switch. So that is how we can differentiate. And a lead switching with sinus arrest patient, it can go undetected for years. So there was a case which was shown after 14 years. It was found that it was a lead disconnection was there.
Yes, a few weeks back, no, Dilip.
Yes.
Literature.
Important thing, Dilip, will be that the 2 spikes in the QRS will be at least separated by the AV delay. That is going to be So that much AV delay is going to be there because you can have such a pattern even with the atrial lead falling on the a dislodged atrial lead. But in that case, the spike will come at the ventricular escape interval. Hereby, if you just change the lead, the first spike will instigate a QRS, but in the AV delay time, you will have another spike in the in the QRS itself. So that AV delay will be maintained. But what I'm able to
2 spikes can also be seen when a BPC comes and MVP moves if VPC is sensed, and MVP crosstalk is ventricle safety pacing can happen on the T wave.
Right,
That will happen, definitely happen in the, but the difference will be whether your QRS, the spike is before the QRS or not. When it happens for a case where you have a VPC where a ventricular escape interval occur, you will have something like a pseudo fusion where your spike will be a little after the starting of the VPC. But in case there is a lead reversal, the first spike itself will produce the QRS. So that difference you'll be able to appreciate, and then you'll have the next spike within the QRS at the AV delay interval. But
Right.
here I cannot appreciate it's a complete reversal, because in some leads the spike is quite far and in some leads it's near. If it's just a lead reversal, why will this pattern come up? Dilip, are you
Yeah,
understanding my point? Why will this pattern come up if it is a complete lead reversal?
depends on the sensing, how the ventricle lead is sensing. So ventricle is spacing. Most of the time ventricle is spacing.
Okay.
Sir, Dilip sir, you see the lead 2. So you get a pace, B sense, A pace, B sense, A pace, B sense, A pace. Suddenly you get an VPC. Can't it be that atrial spike, then a V pace, a paced AV delay which has come on the T wave?
Very,
that-
very ECG when you get
No.
You get a VPC, and that VPC happens at the same time atrial spike gave a spike, and then at the paced AV delay of जो भी set होगा उसमें 200.
It has come as a safety pacing. But once again, A sense V pace is occurring, but why? Because the A lead, the atrial lead should produce a QRS, because you have to interchange the lead. If you interchange the lead, the atrial spike will produce a QRS. That's what I'm saying. If it's a complete lead reversal, this pattern cannot come.
and
Dilip,
But
every time
will be
you see
function will be there.
No. See, whatever Anunne is saying is absolutely correct. But the point is that if there is a lead reversal, what will your atrial impulse produce?
Now
It will produce a QRS.
inhibited because
It is there.
because this, suppose go on discussing the second lead 2, first spike. This is a ventricular spike causing atrial depolarization. Atrial lead is in ventricle, that is sensing that electrical activity is inhibited.
Sir, if the atrial lead is in the ventricle, impulse by the atrial lead should depolarize the ventricle.
No,
Depolarize the ventricle.
the AV conduction is all right. Electrical activity in the ventricle is inhibiting the atrial lead. Because the sensing function
Absolutely.
will be lost. Sensing function will be there. It will not be lost. It will pace inadvertently, but sensing function will be there. That's why
Sir, the point is of a spike.
in ventricle.
Even if there is any, the lead has reversed. So the first spike from the atrial lead, what is it expected to do? What is it expected to do? It's expected to
Do anything if there is a QRS from intrinsic ventricle, because the sensing function will be there. Sensing function, it will not discriminate whether it is atrial electrical activity or ventricular activity, but it will sense.
Agree, sir. Agree, sir. But the question is, why suddenly this what is that this APVP which is supposedly a VP atrial lead facing a ventricle, or just a VPC which is happening at that time?
VPC is happening at that time. It is
Ek minute. Anunne, how is it okay that you have a spike which is an atrial spike will not be able to depolarize the ventricle, because the function of that spike is to depolarize the ventricle. It is right. It's an atrial lead which is connected to the ventricle. So it's supposed to depolarize. There's no sensing function which can come. You have given a spike and it will depolarize the ventricle.
no.
If you have reversed,
It is atrial. The ventricle is having atrial lead that is getting inhibited by this complex. If you PVC,
let me summarize. Let me summarize.
Sing.
Anunne and Sanjeev boss, let me summarize. What is actually happening here? So ventricle is facing the atrial chamber, and there is an intrinsic AV conduction. So,
Okay.
so it is it's a P followed by QRS, and the sensing, there is always a problem. The ventricle channel has got different sensitivity. Atrial channel has got different sensitivity, and that and a ventricle lead which is there in ventricle is defined to see R waves. and in atrial it is defined to see P waves, but it's reverse here. So because of the undersensing, this ventricle, the atrial channel has paced here. That's why you are getting a ventricular spike. So your question, your query is that why it is not a QRS, VPC, and then a atrial, a spike is there. How can 2-3 times similar thing is happening? It is just not a coincidence. Okay, so this is how these kind of situations work. It is very difficult to make out from ECGs if you don't have this kind of 1 or 2 complexes where you can make out a QRS capture with a spike followed just by AV delay. There is another spike. So this is the crux of identifying this kind of ECGs, and it is very difficult. You can see you can push your brain for half an hour time to just understand everything. This is how sensitivity pattern of ventricle and atrial channels are going on. This will reflect.
Any other questions or comment?
Una?
Yeah. So, like nice inputs from Dilip and Prakash. And if there is nothing more to say from your side, then we can conclude this session.
I want to last input from my side.
Amit, any comment from?
Yeah, Anuna, you want to make another comment? Amit?
No,
Looks reasonable, sir. Looks reasonable. I will read it more.
It depends on sensitivity. A lot of sensitivity issues are there in cross channels. And one more input from my side. Whenever you get in QRS and you feel that it is in coronary sinus, it's not in it's not in RV apex, it's coronary sinus. The QRS the lead 2-3 AVF will always be done. Okay, so it is a QRS coronary sinus is a posterior structure. So it is a posterior depolarization starting and then going anteriorly. So lead 2-3 AVF will be down. So Amit, you showed a case where in coronary sinus the lead was there. So the lead 2-3 AVF clinches the diagnosis.
Hello, Dilip.
Nah.
Hello.
Hi.
Yeah, just to add to it, regarding the QRS axis of your ventricular depolarization by your a normal RV pacemaker, put in the apex, put in the outflow tract with a LV pacemaker, and with a CRT, we should be very aware that normal RV pacemaker will have a left superior axis. Normal RVOT placed lead in the of a pacemaker will have a normal axis, and your LV pacing will have absolutely rightly told by Dilip will have a right inferior axis, and CRT will have overlap between a northwest axis and a left superior axis.
Great.
And one more thing, you showed very well about rate drop pacemaker. So there, it was so clearly evident the way the pacemaker increased it. So it's a rate drop window which was shown there.
Yeah.
So that pacing for vasovagal, though it's not in the cardiogenic syncope also, it's a class 2A indication.
Absolutely.
It was the rate drop window which was working there. It was a clear-cut rate drop pacemaker working there.
Absolutely. Thank you for the input.
I think it's a good discussion. Any final comment from Dilip?
No, sir. I think I'm doing more than what is required from me.
Nice. Yeah, this is just a family kind of discussion. It's a very good. Excellent. So we can conclude now.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
So
Thank you very much.
we can conclude meeting now.
Next Thursday, we're assembling again.
All the presenters and also the audience, and most of the thanks should go to Dilip again and again, because he is conducting everything and it is occurring, I think, in 2 weeks interval. No, Dilip, weekly or
Weekly, sir. Next Thursday again there is presentation.
very
A
good.
big clap for Dilip
Okay.
and Prakash.
Chalo.
Thank you very much, Munna, Amit, everyone, Sanjeev boss, Aruna, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Munna, next week.
Munna has got disconnected.
Okay.
Chalo.
Bye, sir. Good night.